think everything looks good. I think you can hear me. Hopefully, I haven't done this in a while. So hopefully if there's any issues, you guys are going to let me know immediately. The new Game of Thrones spinoff series aired this Sunday, House of the Dragon. And I have a lot of thoughts. I have a lot of thoughts. But I'll try to keep it spoiler-free at the beginning. And you kind of know how this goes. Welcome to the newest episode of SDW.
Super Dario World!
Fun fact, for those of you who didn't know, my very first podcast was a Game of Thrones podcast. The very first one, the very first episode, I believe it was The Return of Game of Thrones. I believe that's what I called it. I'm not 100% sure. Again, it's been a while. But it was my very first podcast, and I was just excited for the new season of Game of Thrones, and I wanted to rip it to shreds. Because at that point, the show had, let's just say, become not good. Become ridiculous. And so... If you want the quick easy version here for this one for House of the Dragon, because I've had a lot of people reach out for asking me like, hey, what do you think of the show? Is it worth it? If you're a normie, like the title says it, the show's okay-ish. Like it's not the worst thing I've ever seen. It's not great. It's not terrible. It's whatever. It's definitely whatever. But again, if you're a normie. By the way, by normie I mean that you haven't read the books or you haven't written your own fanfic about the series and stuff like that. So that's what I mean by normie. So if you're really not in the know of any of all this stuff, that's what that means. It means that you've only watched the show. Everything you know about this series, about this franchise, comes from the show. So that's what I mean by normie. If you're a normie, again, it's whatever. There's nothing that I would consider special about this particular episode, at least. I've been thinking back. I've been going back into thinking like the very first episode of Game of Thrones, and the very first episode of Game of Thrones felt really special. I remember at that point I hadn't read the books, but I remember the opening sequence where they go off these three random characters that we didn't know who they were, but they go over this big gigantic ice wall, and then they get killed by what looks like zombies or something. We were very confused. We didn't know what was happening. It was very creepy, and it had this magical element to it, and the rest of the episode has nothing of magic in it. Nothing whatsoever. It's all just like a medieval drama. And it was really cool, and it had a bunch of some of the best lines in the show come from the pilot. Like I remember Ned Stark, the man who swings the sword the man who passes the sentence should swing the sword. And it's Bran asking again Ned Stark like, can a man be brave when he's afraid? That's the only time a man can be brave. Jaime Lannister's the things you do for love. Tyrion asking the butt thing, you know, like Benjen Stark saying like, you know, my brother says that anything you say before the word butt doesn't count, stuff like that. So there's a bunch of, I'd say, iconic moment. I'd say phrases that are even worthy of putting on T-shirts, and or you know, just quote and stuff. Doesn't matter. This series didn't really have those moments. At least not for me. I didn't feel any particular moment of, let's say, magic, or a moment that I'm like, oh, that was so cool, or this character's so cool. I mean, I hated Jaime Lannister, but they get your attention. The character seemed larger than life. Tyrion Lannister seemed larger than life. Ned Stark, you love the guy. He seemed like good, honorable. You liked him. You wanted to follow him around. The kids wanted to follow him around. You felt bad for Jon Snow. Here, not so much. Not so much whatsoever. So if you're comparing it, and this show actually has the advantage of you kind of already know a bit about this world. They don't really have to explain everything, which they should. So again, if you're going to watch, it might get better. There's always the potential of it getting better. They invested a lot of money in it. It shows mostly. There's some things that I thought looked ridiculous. Like I didn't particularly like how the throne looked. I'll show you in a minute. I have an image of that. But overall, visually, very impressive. Again, all the budget went to the dragons, or most of it. The costumes are really nice. They're very shiny. But it's the content that's lacking, which is really weird because they have really good source material. And they supposedly got it straight from I mean, there's a book called Fire and Blood that breaks down the story of the Targaryens, which is, they have 300 years of history. And so this brings me to the things that I thought were kind of weird. So again, if you're a normie, the episode's probably fine. There's a few things that are shocking there, but overall, it didn't feel special. And it may have potential, may not. We'll see. I'll give it a shot. And by the way, just so you know, so you're pre-warned, the show's going to get very confusing very quickly because there's going to be a time skip. There's no way. I mean, I kind of already know the history of a lot of these characters, and the most interesting part of their lives happen a few years in the future. So there's going to be a time skip. You're going to be confused. They're probably not going to explain it well, but whatever. I'm sorry. I gave you a warning. Also, you're going to be very confused with the names of the dragons and who the dragon riders are. And it's going to be a mess that way. Like this episode, I probably would have spent the majority of the time drilling in the names of the dragons, the dragon riders, the names of the Valyrian steel blades. So fair warning, you're going to get confused. That's the problem. And this brings me to like my biggest question coming into the show is why did they choose this particular timeline? Like again, the Targaryen house has 300 years of history. That's how long their reign, lasted. And I didn't understand why it didn't start from the beginning. Like if this would have been me, if HBO would have come to me and said, "Hey Dario, we're gonna give you a buttload of money for you to make a show about the Targaryens," and I would have been like, "All of them?" Like, yeah, all the Targaryens. So I was like, "All right, fine." I would have probably made it kind of like an anthology series, and each season would have taken on a generation of the Targaryens, because every single one is very interesting. They all do, well, most of them are very interesting. They do a bunch of really clever stuff, evil stuff sometimes, really good stuff, really controversial stuff, but it's an interesting storyline overall. And so I would have started with, with Aegon the Conqueror, who's, one of the big three of the Targaryens, and I would have built my way up to to all the way to the big climax would have been Robert's Rebellion, which is how Game of Thrones starts. So each season would have been a build up to that, and maybe it would have been a little bit easier for the audience to follow. I'm not sure, but again, this is a big show. It's a big franchise. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of houses. There's a lot of dragons. There's a lot of swords. It's gonna be confusing. It's gonna be confusing as hell. Like I forget, and the Targaryens have a very, very nasty habit of reusing the same names. Like I hate it. It's one of the things that I hate the most. Like, why can't you come up with a better name? But whatever. I mean, it makes sense, I guess. And they're all kind of similar, but whatever. I guess it's a family name. Doesn't matter. So again, you're gonna be confused. You're gonna be very confused. Again, I read the books. I'm confused, and so it was a very confusing place for them to start. I guess like the only thing that I can guess is because, like, why wouldn't they start with Aegon the Conqueror? And I'm guessing it's because it would have been crazy expensive. But I'm really not gonna, let that fly with HBO. They've invested a lot of money in this. They have the money for it. Like, if they want to make this franchise, if they want to bring it back, you need to remember this franchise went down in flames, like horribly, disgustingly bad. It was probably the biggest TV show in the world. And now nobody talks about it. Everybody hated it because the ending was so terrible, disgustingly bad. And so what can you do? How can you bring it back? Well, the way that I would have done it is, doing cool stuff, putting cool characters on the screen, not making them idiots, and not retconning my own work. So far, it's not looking good. But again, just the first episode. And so let's break it down a little bit. I wanted to do the whole breakdown, like I do sometimes of episodes. This is what happens here, but I can't really show it the way that I usually do because there's a lot of nudity in HBO. So I kind of have to do it this way. But let's just focus on the key elements here, the most important things. And so we need to start with the main character of the series. Oh, that's not the right one. Where are you? Well, actually, I can just show you the throne. All right, I kind of hate how this looks. Let me make it bigger. All right, so you see it here. It looks really crappy. Like it looks stupid. I honestly like this. I'll show you. This is artwork of how the Iron Throne is supposed to look, or how how it's described in the books. Like, look at this thing. It's massive. It's epic. It looks dangerous. It looks scary. The weapons of your conquered enemies. It looks really cool. Really fucking cool. And again, terrifying. And it's a throne that well, I don't remember exactly who said it, but it's like a king should never be comfortable on his sitting on his throne. And so again, you can see it's a massive, gigantic chair made out of swords. The swords of the conquered enemies of Aegon the Conqueror, right? And here it looks stupid. All right, it looks stupid. It looks cheap. It looks rubbery, crappy. I'm just not at all a fan. Like, not at all. Not even a little bit. Not even at all. And so I hated it. I hated that particular thing. Like, if you're gonna upgrade the Iron Throne, upgrade the Iron Throne. But this is just stupid. I'm sorry. It's just stupid. Actually, no, I'm not sorry. Sorry, not sorry. It's a really stupid thing. It looks really crappy. They could have done better. They have the money for it, so I don't really understand what they were thinking. I don't understand what they were thinking. And so let's just move on to the cast, I guess. So we'll begin with a princess. Is this the one? All right. So with Princess Rhaenyra. So this, again, I was torn. I was confused. Why'd they start with her? Again, 300 years of history, a bunch of really interesting characters, a bunch of really interesting things that happened. So why start with Rhaenyra? And because I could give you like a really quick breakdown of Rhaenyra based on the information from the books. Like, it's really quick, and it's not, well, I guess it could be kind of spoilers, but not really. I don't think it's spoilers at all, but just a quick breakdown of how she's explained it in the books. Who Rhaenyra is. She's a stupid girl with a cuck dad, with a cuck husband, with a really badass uncle. That's her story in a nutshell. Okay, she's not really a big deal or something. However, I could see, like, immediately from the opening scene, I could understand what was happening here, and it's a girl power thing, or like it's the moment where the girl has an opportunity to the first girl that's going to break the glass ceiling and whatnot, and maybe potentially become the first female ruler of Westeros. And so I understand that. I get it. It's a storyline. It could be fun. The problem is that I don't really like the way that they're getting there, and I don't like the way that they're portraying her. Now, again, first episode, and there's going to be a time skip, so we're going to see her a little bit older eventually. But I don't, again, I know her story. She's not particularly impressive, but this is not, they're not following the books, so they could add other stuff. The problem here is the way that everything was presented in this episode is the dudes are evil a-holes and the women are kind of just like victims to the system or whatever. Which, if you got, again, remember, think back, Game of Thrones. The women were also very evil and manipulative, and they had their own agendas. Think Cersei. Cersei was an evil bitch and very, very cunning, and she found a way to get what she wanted. Daenerys also very similar. They used different weapons, but they found ways of getting what they wanted as well. And so it's they weren't just along for the ride. They were part of the ride. All right, they were they were setting the agenda. They were moving things in the direction that they wanted. They were actual players, right? They weren't just pawns. Now, this girl's story could be interesting because she is a dragon rider. And so here's where I think that, at least on the first episode, there's a lot of missed opportunities. Because first off, I didn't really like the way that they treated the dragons. It's a dragon, okay? Well, first off, it's a wyvern, but whatever. We'll call it dragons. It's a dragon, and she's a dragon rider. That's the equivalent of a nuke. Basically, dragons are stand-in for nuclear weapons, and she is the wielder of one. Right? A dragon listens to her. Everybody and their mother should be trying to have some sort of influence on her, and she shouldn't be this meek little girl. She's a dragon rider. Again, rider of the most deadly creature in existence. She should be cocky AF. Like, she should feel like, you know what? I need to put up with this. I'm a dragon rider. And you should feel that personality coming out of her. Again, it gives you a lot of confidence. Have you ever ridden a horse? You feel pretty cool. Imagine riding a dragon. Like, you would feel invincible, and you're one of the only 10 people in the world who does it? Are you kidding me? Like, I would never shut up about it. Like, it would be the only thing I'd talk about. Like, yeah, my dragon does this, this, this. I would never stop. Ever. So, it's one of those things that it does not really reflected. And so, and it's in little lines that they don't take advantage of. For example, when the mom says, like, oh, you stink of dragon. They could have made her cool. And it could have been like, she could have answered, the Targaryen answer would have been like, I am a dragon. Or, I smell like fire and blood. Or something. You know, like, hey, drop a cool line here. But they didn't. They went like a really lame route, which is, okay. It's a decision. I think it's a dumb decision. Because you're not making your characters cool. Alright? This is the first episode. This is the first time seeing her. Make her cool. Why can't you make her cool? Like, I don't get it, but fine. Again, she's still young. I didn't particularly... Again, everybody should be trying to influence her. She is a princess who rides a dragon. You want her on your side. There should be everybody and their mother trying to marry her. Like, everybody. Because it's a lot. It's too much power. Like, again, you should be seeing all these smarmy, sneaky people trying to take things from her. And so some of them might convince her with, some of them trying to use, like fear. Some of them might try to use kindness or love or whatever. That'd be interesting to see. But we don't see any of it. Like, not what's her. She's kind of like an afterthought. She's kind of like, oh, yeah, whatever. Rhaenyra, it doesn't matter. Because it could be part of the story. It just doesn't really make sense for a girl who rides a dragon. Okay? It doesn't make... The people in this world, or in any world, are too greedy to pass that up. And she's a reasonably pretty girl. So would you be like, hey, you know what? I have a son and he's my heir, but I don't want him to marry a princess who rides a dragon. That'd be too good for my house. I wouldn't be trying to convince her or whatever. No, gain favor from the king, probably a bunch of lands. Nah, that's too much work, too much hassle. I don't need it. No. It's not how that works. Not whatsoever. But whatever. Again, wasted opportunity. That, to me, the people who wrote this episode just didn't read the books and fundamentally don't understand the story. So, that's her. We'll see where her story goes. So far, it has potential, let's say, but whatever. Next, this I was very upset about. Well, actually, not very upset about. All right, so the other key player here, and you'll understand why in a few episodes, is I'm terrible with names, but it's the Hightower girl. Let me check her name again. Alicent. Sorry, names are not my thing. So Alicent Hightower is her best friend. There's hints of kind of like a lesbian relationship here, which I don't remember from the books, but I don't hate it. As a red-blooded male, I don't hate it. I honestly, she's one of my favorite parts of the show. The Hightowers, I really liked. Her and her dad, I really like the casting. I like the way they're portraying them. They actually feel like players. They actually feel like players in the Game of Thrones. They feel like they have some sort of agenda. They're doing something. You feel like Alicent genuinely cares for Rhaenyra, but she understands her role. She understands her place in this world, and she's there to play a game. Now, the Hightowers I was very excited to see because we haven't really seen them in the books. Again, this would be generations down in the future, but it's really weird. The Hightowers are a very big, very important family who kind of appear to be in the center of everything, but we've never seen them. And so there's a big mystery. There's a lot of conspiracy theories around the Hightowers, but whatever. So it was fun to see. And I like the way they're portrayed, and I like the direction that they're going, so I'm fine. No real complaints there. So next, okay, I think this is, oh yeah, this one really bugged me. I was really upset, and I complained about it incessantly, and that's Matt Smith as Daemon Targaryen. Now, half of it is I don't think Matt Smith is cool. He's a good actor, really good actor. He's played Doctor Who, and I think he's a really good actor. I didn't think he was cool enough to play Daemon Targaryen. And the other half is that he was written terribly. And I mean disgustingly bad. Daemon Targaryen, or Daemon Targaryen, however you want to say it, is one of the big Targaryen three. So there's the big three of the Targaryens. The coolest, the most iconic, the most legendary. Like if you're gonna rank them, it's going those are gonna be in the top three every single time. Pretty much. That's Aegon the Conqueror, Aemon the Dragon Knight, and Daemon Targaryen, the Rogue Prince. This is an a-hole whose nickname is the Rogue Prince. He should be the coolest character pretty much in all Game of Thrones. Like there's a few characters who might be able to compete in the cool level. Maybe, I don't know. Let's say Bronn. I thought Bronn was really cool in his own way, but he's kind of like poor cool. This is like rich, godly cool. Like Jaime Lannister could have been maybe that cool, but he was too much of a dick and too much of a douche, and he bangs his own sister. So that kind of made him lose a lot of points. And I mean a lot of points. So I thought it was, again, what are you trying to do if you're HBO? You're trying to sell this, right? You're trying to sell merchandise. You want people to think, man, the Targaryens are super cool. That their house is awesome. I want to be a Targaryen. Because you remember the arguments that people used to have with Game of Thrones, like, no, man, I like the Starks better. No, I like the, well, nobody ever said the Targaryens, but I like the Lannisters. They're cooler. Oh, the Baratheons. No, it made things interesting. Here, everybody should be like, yeah, Targaryens, they're awesome, because this is like the apex, or like the cusp of their power, right? The cusp of their greatness. Which, by the way, they still hadn't conquered the Seven Kingdoms. I believe Dorne still wasn't conquered at this particular point in time. And so you should be walking away thinking like, these are the cool. I want to be like them. Because you want to sell the merch. You should be giving this guy the coolest lines because you want to be like him. You want to sell the merch. You want people to buy the shirt with lines from Daemon Targaryen and stuff like that. And they made him kind of like very pathetic in a way, in many ways. And I'll just break down some of the things that he did that I was like, seriously? You grabbed one of the coolest characters in the books, who has one of the coolest nicknames, the Rogue Prince, and you made him kind of like you made him pathetic, and you had opportunities to make him look cool, like very cool. So let's say, for example, he's banging a hooker and he can't get it up. It happens to guys, sometimes it happens. You have a few too many drinks, but you're showing weakness. And again, you're introducing the character. You're right. You're supposed to be introducing a character who's cool, and you're already immediately showing a weakness. There's a fight in a tournament. What's the rule? What's my rule for the first fight of a villain, or for any character whatsoever that you want to make them to look cool and scary and imposing? They can't lose their first fight. And he loses his first fight, and he doesn't only lose his first fight, he kind of loses it because he's an idiot. So for showboating and turning his back on an enemy, because he didn't watch Zombieland and the rule you double tap, because he didn't double tap, he lost, and he looked like an idiot. So again, how is that cool? He doesn't look cool. He looked pathetic and small when he made fun of a dead baby. So again, that's not something a cool guy does. That's something that a loser does. When he was, again, in the jousting in the tournament, he cheated. And by the way, there's a lot that tournament. There's a lot of stuff that I can complain about. Like if I want to get really nitpicky with it, the cool guy doesn't cheat. All right, he might do stuff that's kind of shady, kind of like borderline, but he doesn't flat out cheat. And what he did was an illegal move, and that's not what somebody cool does. So the cool guy would have beaten him outright clean and just not even broken a sweat, and then he would have gone for his sister and asked for her favor. That's what a cool guy does. But he, again, not so much. This guy's a dragon rider. When he was rounding up all the criminals and stuff, like imagine if he would have been just standing on a dragon. Like that, he didn't have to do anything. He didn't have to kill anybody or whatever. He just had to be standing on a dragon, and then whoever he was gonna kill kills with dragon fire. Like that, again, kind of cool stuff. Crazy, definitely. But remember, he's a Targaryen, and this is the most controversial character maybe in the franchise, maybe. And I'm talking Trumpian levels of controversial. All right, and I'm not saying loved and hated. I mean beloved or despised. Okay, like he's on the extremes for pretty much everybody. So, either you love him or you're terrified of him. So again, not making him look cool. The scene where the brother exiles him, where when the King's guards they kind of block his path with the sword and he backs down like a pussy. That's not something that a cool guy does, all right? Especially if you're a badass warrior like he's supposed to be, like a badass fighter. Like at that point, the King's guards stand in front of you. You remember what Barristan Selmy did? When he pulls out his sword and everybody comes around him, he's like, even now I could cut through all of you like cake. All right? Barristan Selmy, who's kind of well, not personality-wise, very vanilla. Personality-wise. Total badass with the sword, but kind of vanilla personality. And Daemon Targaryen backs down? Really? The Rogue Prince backs down from that? Like, in that situation, something simple. He could have been like, you guys remember? This guy has Valyrian steel. All right, he has a Valyrian steel sword. Now, for those of you who don't know what Valyrian steel is, Valyrian steel sword is this world's equivalent of a lightsaber. It's super sharp. You never need to sharpen it. It's permanently sharp. It's almost unbreakable, and it's crazy light. Like you can move it like it's nothing. All right, so it's unfair to have a fight against Valyrian steel. And this guy is not only carrying Valyrian steel, he's also a very talented fighter. So, in that situation where the guards just stand in front of him, he could have been like, so, you want to dance with my dark sister? Or something very simple, you know? Anything. Or prepare, all right, so you're willing to dance with my dark sister? That's the name of the sword, by the way, Dark Sister. I'm telling you, the names are going to be confusing in the future. He could have, something like that. Not backing down like a pussy. All right? Because that's not what cool guys do. It's just not. It's not. And it was very annoying. It was very frustrating because they're neutering a character. A character that should be epic to see on screen. Like, if you guys ever watched Rome, do you ever watch HBO's Rome? Like, I've always imagined Daemon Targaryen very similar to Mark Antony. Again, that I believe that, all right, Daemon Targaryen is kind of the Mark Antony of Game of Thrones, except on crack, you know, like even crazier still, because the man rides a dragon. Okay, he rides a dragon. You have no idea what that would do to your head. Like, what can I explain? Like, have you ever fired a gun and been like, whoa, like I have this thing that you know, like it's a lot of power in my hands and I have it. Like imagine having basically the equivalent of a nuke and it only listens to you. It would go to your head. And he was already kind of crazy to begin with because, you know, the weird Targaryen incest stuff. So, not taking advantage of that, not really exploring the character. And also, by the way, this kind of was really weird. You remember the moment when I said that Daemon cheated in the fight against the High Tower. I believe Gwaine Hightower, I believe that was his name. And then he goes up to his sister and asks for her favor with, you know, like the little crown of flowers. And the girl gives it to him. All right. This guy almost killed your brother. Your dad hates him. And she looks at the dad like dead in the eye and she's like, I'm going to do it anyway. Which would be totally fine if that's her personality. Okay. Like, honestly, like if the dad in that situation has a lot of control of her life, so I probably wouldn't do it. But if she's going to do it like that, do it like that. But the problem is, afterwards, she kind of listens to exactly every single thing her dad says to do. So it's very confusing. Like, it's almost like the personalities don't make any sense. And again, I don't just want to rag on Matt Smith for this. I blame the writing. The performance could have been better, but he's closer to Viserys. You remember how Viserys was pathetic? He was like a loser, like he didn't really feel powerful or dangerous. Here, it's like imagine he feels like a more competent Viserys, like he could actually be dangerous, but still small. He looks so small and pathetic because, again, cool people don't do petty things like making fun of dead babies or cheating in tourney fights. It's just not what they do. And so I didn't like it. They still have a chance to turn it around. We'll see. But it's a bad introduction. Because again, did this guy say anything in the entire episode that you'd be like, man, I want that in a shirt? Or I'd have a poster with that. Something. No. And there's a lot of one-liners from Daemon Targaryen. There's a lot of very interesting quotes about Daemon Targaryen. The way to describe him, very interesting stuff. And let's just say lacking. Disappointing. Next, let's see. Who was I talking about? Well, we got King Viserys. Honestly, this dude did kind of an okay job because this guy also looks kind of like a loser, but he's kind of supposed to be a loser and weak and stuff. And he's kind of trying to play the line between the sympathetic dad and also the a-hole who's killed his wife. Or let's just say ordered the death of his wife? Maybe. I don't know. And so, by the way, I like the kind of like the parallels there, like the tournament and then the giving birth, especially because if you looked at the arena from the top, it looked just like a vagina. I don't know what they're, subtlety, guys. you need to learn to be a little bit more subtle, but whatever. It did. Look at it. Look at the shot from the top. It looks exactly like that. And then you got the birthing scene. I don't know. Whatever. Anyway, so I think this guy did kind of an okay job. I wish that it would have been not so. What am I looking for? What's the word am I looking for? Because again, they're trying to paint it like guys are just evil and women have no agency. Like I think that this guy was very much being manipulated by a lot of other people. And I wish they would have shown that more. Like, it's not even his decisions. Also, very weird. The dream stuff. So, this guy is very 100% convinced from a dream that his son is going to be the prince that was promised. And by the way, okay, I'm going to try to make this as simple as possible. The prince that was promised is a prophecy that's supposed to be from the Song of Ice and Fire. The Song of Ice and Fire is a prophecy the Targaryens follow, but there's also another prophecy called the Azor Ahai, which is what the followers of R'hllor, which would be like Melisandre, the fire people, they believe on. And there's things that interject there. It's very confusing, doesn't matter. The point is, I believe he mentions the prince that was promised. And so he's convinced that the baby that's going to be born is the prince that was promised because he saw it in a dream. And then turns out that he killed his wife and the baby didn't live, right? That's how that went down. Right? So you would think at this point that the man would not trust dreams anymore. However, not only does he still trust dreams, he trusts the dreams of his ancestors. The dude who lived 150 years ago, he trusts his dreams. Because afterwards, there's a scene between him and Rhaenyra, and he's like, yeah, let me tell you the dream about our great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, Aegon the Conqueror. And he had this dream that, he called it the Song of Ice and Fire and blah, blah. Now, is that something that happens in the books? Not really. We're not exactly sure. We're not exactly sure what the Song of Ice and Fire is, to be honest. But it could be. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really affect stuff. Not from where I'm standing. But it was just a weird thing. Like, I mean, you would think at that point, you'd be like, yeah, you know what? Maybe dreams are just dreams. Or maybe they're just BS. But no, the dude's really committed. Like, he really believes it. And so he wanted to make sure that his daughter also believed it, which, all right, whatever. Then we have Otto Hightower. Again, this was probably my favorite casting of the show. After watching him perform, again, probably the character that feels most Game of Thrones-y. Like, he feels like he's manipulative, that he really hates Daemon, that he's got a plan, that he's trying to do sneaky stuff. Like, he actually feels like a player. And so I like the casting. I like that he fits into the world and he kind of got what was going on. So probably my favorite casting. And then we'll go to probably the most controversial one. The most controversial one is Lord Valerian. Now, Corvus Valerian. Now, for those of you who don't know who this is, Corvus Valerian is the husband of the king's cousin? I don't know. But House Valerian, Corlys, my bad. Corlys Valerian. The House Valerian is actually Valyrian. They're from Old Valyria. There's the family from Old Valyria. Now, for those of you who don't know what Old Valyria is, the Targaryens were originally from a land called Valyria. Now, imagine basically Valyria all right, so you know that Westeros is here, and then you got the free cities and the other continent over here, like across the Narrow Sea. Well, in the other continent, there was an empire called the Valyrian Empire. You know, they created Valyrian steel swords. Basically, imagine like the Roman Empire. All right, so the Valyrians were the Roman Empire, and they ruled the world because they had dragons. And then something happened. It's not clear exactly what happened, but it caused the fall of Old Valyria and the dread and all that stuff. And supposedly, you can't even go back there. If you go there, you get sick and you die or whatnot. So, again, it's not clear what happened. So, fortunately for the Targaryens, an old Targaryen, he had a dream and he foresaw the fall of Valyria, so he crossed the Narrow Sea, he went to Dragonstone, and there he built his castle or whatever. And there were a few other Valyrian houses that left. And so, House Valyrian was one of them. Now, here's where things get really kind of controversial, and it's because you're gonna touch a racial topic. Now, Game of Thrones, in the series, the original series, race is kind of important because it helps you identify where somebody is. Imagine Westeros is kind of like, imagine like an inverse, if you turn over Europe. So, like the north it's pretty easy. It's like the Nordic countries. Dorne at the bottom is kind of like Spain, Portugal, so the people are tanner, stuff like that. In the middle is kind of like the Garden Lands are kind of like France. They have a lot of land, a lot of food, a lot of people. What are the other stuff? What would I don't know, the Iron Islands would be like England, like wet, sucks. It's always raining, stuff like that. So the Germany the Vale would be Germany and all mountainous and stuff. No, that would be Switzerland. Whatever. The point is, it's kind of like Europe. And in Game of Thrones, race is kind of very important. Like the Northmen, they're from the blood of the first men. The people from below the neck, like the Lannisters, the Tyrells, the Baratheons, they're descendants of not the Baratheons. They're descendants of the Andals, who came in and conquered, who I believe are slightly taller and bigger. The Cranach men are also very weird. The Dornish, they're kind of tanner. They in the show, I believe they mostly use people from the Middle East for there. Then you got the free cities, what is it? The Dothraki, again, they look Middle Eastern, or Jason Momoa, he's Hawaiian? I don't know. The point is, then you got the Summer Islanders, who are black. And the Valyrians, the easiest way to identify them is because they are pale, they're silver-haired, and they have purple eyes. Now, everybody and their mother forgot about the purple eyes, right? I don't know why. They could have just added it with CGI. They didn't care. They could have, used fake eyes. They didn't care. They didn't do it. And so that went by the wayside. And so you were left only with the fair skin and silver hair. And so a lot of people were very upset by them casting Corvus Valerian out as a Valyrian, and understandably so, because it's a series that kind of is based on that, because it's important where you're from, because where you're from is very important to where your loyalties are, and sometimes they hate people just because of who they are or how they look. Like, for example, the people from the Garden Lands hate the Dornish. I mean, loathe them and despise them entirely. So if they see each other, they'll probably just fight for no reason. So again, very racial stuff. There was a very, very easy way to get around this. And, because otherwise you're going to be retconning the show that you already did. If you guys remember the original Game of Thrones, in Westeros, there's I believe one king from the Summer Islands that's there in the Red Keep, and nobody else. So the very easy solution here would have been like, hey, this Targaryen princess married a prince or one of the king of the Summer Islanders, and done. Stop. That's it. Done. It didn't have to be Corlys Velaryon. We get him out of the way. We even give him the same name, Corlys something else. Easy, simple, easy peasy. But they decide not to do that. And fine. Okay, so this is a world where that really doesn't matter. All right, your nationality is not really tied to the way you look. However, then they made a mistake. They made a big mistake. So I was willing to follow along this. I was like, all right, fine. I'm gonna try to watch this as a normie, and I'll play the game. I'll follow along. I'll believe that. And then, if you guys remember, in the tournament after, I forget this goes. I believe Kristen Cole, after Sir Kristen Cole defeats Daemon Targaryen in their little fight, and I'll get to that journey in a minute. After he beats them in their little fight, he takes off his helmet, and immediately, like that, just by the way he looks, the Princess Rhaenyra goes, "Oh, a Dornishman." So, this causes a whole buttload of problems, because it's supposed to be a world where it doesn't really matter what you look like, because that doesn't really affect your nationality or whatever. And then immediately, they know a person's nationality based on how they look like. Kind of a complicated mess there. Kind of an issue. And kind of breaking the logic of the world you're trying to set up already. So, either pick one or the other. And one has a pretty easy solution. Actually, both have a pretty easy solution. Just one, stick to it. But it's a problem, because you're going to encounter other characters that they are described in a way, and they are identified very easily because of the way they look. So instead of doing that, they could have just grabbed Corlys and been like, he's a prince from the Summer Islands, and done. It was an easy solution. Simple. But they couldn't do it. It's really dumb. I don't get it. Like, it's... How much money do you think they pay these writers? And how stupid are they? Like, what a waste of money. And time. But whatever. You know, it's HBO's money. They want to waste it. They can do whatever they want. So... let's go back to the tourney real quick, because that's honestly that really bugged me. I could get nitpicky with a lot of stuff from this episode. Again, I was trying to watch it as a normie, but there's some things that I can't forget. Like, if I'm going to get super nitpicky with the littlest things, and I'm like, all right, the Baratheon Lord didn't have black hair, and I don't know if you guys remember this, Baratheons having black hair is kind of a big deal. It's kind of a key part of Ned's storyline in figuring out who the father of Joffrey is. You know, it's kind of a big deal. Kind of important. Yeah, I would have paid attention to that. I would have been upset by, well, actually, I was upset by there being a werewood in the middle of the Red Keep. Now, for those of you who don't know, the werewood is a religious symbol for the first men. And the first men, like I already mentioned, the only descendants of the first men are the Northmen. So there's a bunch of werewoods in the north and stuff. However, according to Catelyn, the werewoods were pretty much destroyed anywhere below the neck. So out of the north, they were pretty much destroyed everywhere. Because again, these are religious symbols of a religion they didn't follow. The Andals, when they conquered Westeros, they believed in the seven gods, like the seven-faced god. I forget the name. The point is, they believed in another god. And so, having a werewood in the middle of the Red Keep, again, the Red Keep, it's supposed to be, you know, like they followed the seven, right? The religion of the seven. I forget the name of that god. Whatever. It's the seven-faced god. I don't know. They followed that religion, and in their house, they have a werewood. Like, imagine a church with, I don't know, a picture of Odin, of Ra. You know, just like a little monument there to Ra. It'd be really weird. It makes no sense whatsoever. But but again, it's one of those things that it bugs me, but I can let it go. The tournament stuff may fall there, but it really upset me, because that's not how tournaments work. Like, jousting tournaments, that's not how they work whatsoever. And that's not how they work on Game of Thrones. Like, it's pretty simple. Like, the whole thing about them jousting and afterwards getting in a melee makes no sense whatsoever. Like, could you imagine? Like, these are lords. All right, first off, in order to be a participant in a tournament, you have to be a knight. And usually, most knights, they're kind of big deals. It's not easy to become a knight, and you need to have like a lot of, like at least a lot of connections, a lot of allies, and most of them are lords. All right, most of them, you know, they're kind of big deals. And so, for them to just get killed in a tournament where they're supposed to have blunt weapons, so the jousting, okay, it's dangerous stuff, whatever. And then there's two things. There's jousting, and then there's melee. So the jousting has to do with the horses and the stakes, and you're knocking each other over and blah, blah, blah. That's fine. Then there's a separate thing that's called the melee, where everybody has a blunt weapon, and basically it's like go at each other. Like as they hit you really hard, you're like, all right, I'm out. I'm done. That really hurt. I'm getting out of here. You can choose to participate in either, but a fight continuing after jousting is insane, especially with sharp weapons, especially if they kill each other. Like I think I saw like a Lannister getting killed. Like can you imagine like a Lannister lord being killed by, I don't know, a Tyrell? Like that would be immediate war. Like that would be like war breaks out right then and there. Like they killed your kid. Like again, Daemon Targaryen tried to kill like Gawain Hightower. That's not, again, maybe it's because he's a Targaryen and again he rides a dragon. And he did it cheating. So Otto Hightower was well within his rights to be like, I demand a trial by combat, and they would have to give it to him because Daemon Targaryen cheated and almost killed his firstborn son. So again, it's just it's I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to make it like, oh look, it's so we're still Game of Thrones, we're still edgy, we still have like a lot of sex and nudity and violence and blah blah blah. You can do that, but still make it logical in a way that kind of makes sense. And you know what? It's kind of cool. Like, I don't understand what they were thinking. This makes no sense. Have any of you ever fallen off a horse? It's not a fun experience. Like, it hurts a lot. So after that, getting into a fight, I doubt it. I doubt it. You kind of, most people just, all right, I lost this one. I'll get back to it. There's only one instance in the entire Game of Thrones series that I recall where a fight breaks out immediately after jousting, and that's it. You guys remember season 1? It's when Loras Tyrell defeats the mountain that rides in the tournament, and the mountain gets so pissed he cuts the head off his own horse, and then he tries to kill Loras, and that's when the Hound steps in, and that's it. And that stopped the tournament right then and there. That's the only instance, because it's crazy for them to get into a fight after jousting. It's insane. Like jousting can kill you. So it's one of the, it bugged me. Like I said, I can't say history aficionado because it really isn't history, but it's following the logic of Game of Thrones, which I've read through quite a lot of tournaments. I really recommend like reading the Tales of Dunk and Egg or the Night of the Seven Kingdoms. They break down the tournaments pretty well there, and you're like, okay, so this is how the tournaments work during the Targaryen era. So you can't even say like, oh well, these were different times, these were less civilized. No, I've read how they work. Like if any of these idiot writers would have read a book, like one of them, they would have been like, oh wow, maybe that, that doesn't work. How about if we come up with something clever that actually makes sense? How about if we actually honor the George R. Martin's work and do something that's worthy of it? How about if we actually make characters that are cool? How about if we actually give the audience something that's worth watching? How about if we do that? I mean, we already have most of the stuff written. Somebody else wrote it for us. All we have to do is transfer it in a way that's, that adapts to our medium. But what? Screw that. It's too much work. Reading a book? Crazy. Got better stuff to do. So, again, for normies, it's okay-ish. Nothing special. No memorable quotes. No memorable... Well, other than the birthing scene, nothing else that's memorable at all. There was the scene of the fire pit where Rhaenyra said, or Rhaenys, I forget her name. I don't care. She says Dracarys, and honestly, like I laughed because Dracarys, that was 100% for the normies and the fans of the show. That was a reference. For those of you who don't know, Dracarys is the word that Daenerys trains her dragons when she teaches her dragons that when she says Dracarys, they spit fire, which she totally pulls out of her butt. Like, that's a Daenerys thing. She's the only one who does it. She made it up because guess what? When Daenerys got dragons, nobody knew squat about raising dragons or training them because dragons hadn't been alive for generations. And so she kind of had to make it up. But here they're like, no. It's the word the Targaryens say. She didn't know that. Daenerys didn't know anything. She wasn't educated in anything. The only thing she knew about her family is stuff that her brother said, and her brother's crazy. And so, how would she know anything about the words that they say to train their dragons? It's ridiculous. Maybe it was. Maybe I'm misremembering, and maybe, it turns out that's the actual one. But I'm pretty sure. Like, I'd have to go back to the books, but I'm pretty sure that she pulled it out of her butt. And she just kind of made it up because she thought it sounded cool. Which, granted, it does sound really cool. But I don't get why they brought it back. Also, again, with the fire pit. If you're getting a really nitpicky, supposedly Targaryens don't burn. But again, dragon fire, maybe they do burn with dragon fire. But I found it really funny that the dragon is shooting in this direction. And the direction that the dragon's shooting its fire, the king's guards are standing directly behind it. So again, dragon fire, which supposedly melts rock and metal like it's nothing, cuts through them like butter. And the dudes are standing directly in the line of fire right behind them. It's so stupid. I'd be standing, behind the person who's the, the trainer of the dragon, because you'd be like, maybe I have a better chance of not getting shot at with dragon fire if I'm standing behind the person who controls it. Also, I'm their Kingsguard. Maybe it's like, oh yeah, I'm protecting them, but actually I'm afraid of the freaking dragon fire. I don't want to be made to stand directly in the line of fire, because how does the dragon know where it's going to shoot? Like, you just said Dracarys, and it's like, oh, I guess they mean this thing that's not moving, and not, the actual humans with weapons who could actually be a threat. So, man, it's silly. It's dumb. I don't see much going on this show, which sucks because they have the material for it. And I know the story, and they kind of are mixing up storylines that I don't really think mix very well, but we'll see. We'll see after the time skip. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how they develop the characters. But so far, very much lacking. Left a lot to be desired, or at least for me. Also, by the way, for those of you who are wondering where I was, I've been busy. I've had a really busy summer. Had a great summer, but really busy. Also, lately, I've been busy with a project. I was building a new house for my little dragon. For this, is this thing? Can you hear it? I hope you guys can hear it. I hear it in my ears. I don't know if you guys can hear it. Doesn't really matter, I guess. But yeah, I built a little room for him. You can actually see it. I loaded a reel on my Instagram, so if you want to check that out, it's in @DarioSTW. Yeah, it's right there. It's up. And so you'll get to see his new... I worked really hard on it. It was a pain in the ass. Chicken wire sucks. I hate working with it, but I think the results are pretty cool. And so hopefully you like that. As always, thanks for listening. I don't know what the next episode is going to be, because I want to do a Thor review. Like, I wanted to do that weeks ago. I mean, months ago. But I've just, one thing's been getting in the way or another. But maybe I'll record it early. Or maybe I'll just do it right now. I don't know. We'll see. As always, thank you for listening, and I'll see you again next time.